The webinar has begun. We have a welcome slide on the screen with helpful hints for listening to the webinar through your computer. When it comes time for Q&A on the proposals, it will first be announced. To ask a question, please go to the questions box in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, type in your question, and click Send. I now introduce Connie Lindsay, National President of Girl Scouts of the USA.
Thank you. Welcome to the first of 3 webinars held for National Council delegates. And on behalf of the National Board, I'm pleased to speak with you about the 2014 National Council Session Convention that will convene in Salt Lake City, Utah, October 16th through 19th, 2014. Following the webinar, a link will be provided for those unable to join us or for those who want to listen again. This link will be posted on the Delegate website. Please ask your Council Convention representative about the website if you've not yet registered. We're first going to hear from our CEO, Ana Maria Chavez, with some convention highlights. And after that, we're going to focus on the 3 proposals that are on the agenda for vote. Since we only have an hour together and we want to make sure we use our time wisely, let us begin. Ana, please.
Thank you, Connie. Hello, everyone. It's only a little over 3 months until we gather in Salt Lake City, and I've got to tell you, I just returned from Utah last week, where I actually got to preview the convention site, meet with state and local leaders, and everybody's extremely excited about hosting our amazing movement in Utah. I hope you're also feeling the excitement where you're living, and hopefully you're gathering a whole bunch of people to join us in Salt Lake. Of course, convention gives us all an opportunity to hear inspiring speakers and attend workshops, theme dinners, and social events that are both thought-provoking and fun. It's also a great opportunity to welcome home our alumni. Of course, a focus on girls will be at the center of everything we do. For example, our 4 conversations of consequence will be discussions on topics of great importance to girls and society. There will be a Young Women of Distinction celebration, celebrating the achievements of 10 outstanding Gold Award recipients from across our movement. And during the Girl Scout Leadership Institute, which will be held concurrently with the National Council session, girls will be given the opportunity to focus on 7 topics that their peers have chosen. GSLI participants will also be given the tools they need to start a Take Action project. They will then bring this project back to their councils to continue working on these amazing opportunities. Other program highlights include a Girl Scout History Conference beginning October 14th. And as a side note, I did crash that conference a few years ago, and it was a lot of fun. And the Girl Scout University Learning Sessions, which will start October 15th. I look forward to seeing all of you and your friends and loved ones in Utah. And of course, one of the most important aspects of the convention and the primary reason we are speaking today is your role in helping us to make key governance decisions that guide the effectiveness of our organization and in electing the board that will set the strategic direction for our movement. Your role as a national delegate, as a leader in our movement, is vital, and I look forward to seeing all of you and your friends in Salt Lake. We have lots to cover today, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it back to Connie. Connie?
Thank you, Ana. Now I'm going to ask Nadine Young, our Chief Governance Officer, to introduce our conversation about the 3 proposals. Nadine?
Thank you, Connie. The first proposal for our Q&A today is the flexibility of dues and registration practices. The National Board placed this proposal on the agenda on the recommendation of the task group that studied our dues structure and membership registration practices and developed recommendations, which were endorsed in May 2013 by the National Board. You'll see on your PowerPoint the proposal as written. Representatives of the task group will now provide some background, and following their review, we will have 10 minutes for Q&A on this proposal number 1. So from your task group, we have Linda Foreman, the chair of the task group that studied our dues and registration practices, task group member Janet Newbert, COO of the Girl Scouts of Greater Chicago and Northwest Indiana, and Susan Swanson, GSUSA's Chief Membership Officer. So I'm going to turn this now over to Linda Foreman.
Thanks, Nadine. Hello, everyone.
I am pleased on behalf of the Membership Dues Task Group to talk a little bit today about the proposal entitled Flexibility of Dues and Registration Practices. We will talk through the proposal itself as well as the process or the journey we took that forms the basis of the rationale. As the lead slide said, these constitutional amendments will allow more flexibility in dues and registration practices. The current language in our Constitution refers to annual or lifetime dues. There are two options or two opportunities to pay dues to GSUSA. The proposal, or at least the first part of it, changes that language, makes it more flexible and reads, shall pay applicable membership dues to Girl Scouts of the USA. And the word applicable was chosen from a multitude of synonyms to specifically represent the idea that there could be multiple membership options considered over the years, each of which would have dues associated with it. You'll notice from your pre-work that there are three parts to this proposal. And so parts B and C, which are on the next slide, also address sections in the Constitution where either the word annual or the year term of credentials are mentioned. And both of those then are changed or proposed to be amended for more general language. The overwhelming rationale is to make it easier for people to join, to participate, and to gain the benefits of membership in Girl Scouting by creating more flexible membership options. Why now? Why do this at this point in time? I think for those of you who've been around a while, you will remember that there have been many proposals for specific solutions or specific suggestions, some of them responding to our changing demographics, our changing membership and participation patterns, as well as declining membership. How can we engage more girls and adults in this great movement? So it's because of those things and the fact that we have often had very specific ideas come forward that we look to take a much more holistic approach to it. Councils also face challenges in terms of serving girls throughout the year with radically different participation patterns than 20, 25 years ago, with girls being served later in the year during the summer and experiencing some difficulty around how to best register them in ways that made sense from both a financial and public relations standpoint. So a task group was formed as we transitioned from the last triennium into this triennium and started functioning in April of 2012. This task group was commissioned to study the dues structure and registration process. Again, not evaluating a particular option, but looking holistically at many options. The task group consisted of both national board members, GSUSA staff, and council staff. And the co-creation process, which has joyfully become a way of work at GSUSA, was used throughout this work that involved not only processing many, many different ideas, but extensive research, as has also become our way of work around new ideas, extensive research with both members and non-members, with current customers and potential customers. So as I said, the task group attempted to take a very holistic view, engaging our GSUSA's major customers, the councils, and engaging with representatives from councils around the needs of their customers, both current and potential, as well as the decision makers for those customers. And we evolved to where the benefits became very clear and it became very clear that we needed a more flexible approach, and one that would ensure that our organization is responsive and flexible to try to meet the needs of current and potential members and help to support membership growth as we move forward. And these have both operational and policy elements to it. But the key question is, how can we better compete in today's market? And then always, how can we broaden our governance language to be able to be more responsive, more innovative, and make sure our documents reflect our current ways of work and our needs. I think we're a slide behind. I think another key element of context that was woven throughout all of our work was technology. Is technology an enabler, or is it a barrier? How can we maximize our technology to create the best kind of flexibility for both national and council capacity? What are those capacities to be able to deliver innovative options? And in fact, our initial recommendations were limited by the technology in place at the time. The good news is, again, that we've been working really hard on technology as a key enabler. And so the new volunteer system, including Salesforce software, will support a variety, or has the potential to support a variety of membership options over the years. So should the proposal pass, the technology and the capacity is a key consideration moving forward as we consider all options. So even though our focus is really on the proposal and the enabling governance legislation, a lot of people are already asking, how would this work? And it would work as we work in Girl Scouting, both through operational co-creation, ideas coming from the field, being vetted and feasibility tested, with the National Board having the ultimate policy approval of any change in membership category. And then, of course, the Blue Book would change accordingly. But the process of co-creation is really key here. And it was something that our task group sort of got the field test as we worked through it. It was very much a co-creation process. Everyone an equal partner at the table, every idea a good idea. And with ideas being generated from the field and reflecting both the practical challenges faced by individuals, councils, and GSUSA. The operational working group was comprised of council folks and GSUSA folks that vetted and recommended, and there was active interaction all the way through with the National Board, more policy-oriented task group, and several joint meetings. So I think the co-creation process is already being reflected, for instance, in the K-5 emphasis. Some of the work with the cookie and product sales, and enables us to be responsive and maintain our relevance and move forward quickly. So in summary, this proposal is but one piece of a large group of work, and the proposal, the constitutional changes, would sort of represent the enabling legislation that would empower future flexibility around dues and registration practices. And now I think we're ready for some questions.
Linda, we do have some questions coming in. The first one, Linda, perhaps you can take. Let me scroll back up.
Okay.
There it is. Does Part B mean there will not be a vote on the amount of dues for any new category
Until the
2017 convention? So it's really a question of, again, timing and how the process will work. If you could reiterate that in terms of conversation and decision-making about any new membership category.
Is this you and me right now?
No. You're on,
okay.
Linda. You're on.
Okay. I think Susan, could you say that again?
Sure. Does Part B mean that there will not be a vote on the amount of dues for any new category until the 2017 National Council meeting?
This proposal is really not about an amount of dues or any particular category. And I think so that's not a part of the action at this point in time. And I think previous national council, the understanding built in previous national councils is that the national board and the national council share authority around due setting. So there's no timetable for when new categories or dues amounts would be coming out.
Okay, we have another question. Thanks, Linda. Janet Newbert, I think this would be a great question for you to take. The question is, I love the flexibility of membership. However, how will implementing this affect GSUSA and each council financially, as we may need to update our membership software to help track the varieties of membership? And maybe you can just talk a bit about the work that's going on with the volunteer systems project and our new technology. Shannon, unmuted.
Yes.
Hi there. Sorry about that. I think we were trying to reduce the feedback that we were getting earlier, so got muted there. But I'd love to answer that question. I think that's a great question. So there is a new exciting project that Linda mentioned during her presentation, referred to as Volunteer System / Salesforce K-5. There's a few different names running around on it, but our movement is working together between councils and GSUSA to bring on some new technology. And that was one of the slides that Linda spoke to. At the convention, last time we were all together 3 years ago during the debate about rolling membership years and do we have the capability of doing this, which is, I assume, what the question asker is also getting into. Since then, a lot has changed, and our operational task group that mulled this over had a lot of discussions, and the discussions changed greatly from the beginning of this group's work about, yeah, these types of options are really going to kill us and are not really feasible because technology was such a barrier then. But at this point, with technology being what it is, and with Girl Scouts all clearly focused on technology being a key area of growth and opportunity for us, and I will also compliment GSUSA's brought on a Chief Information Officer, Maggie Miller, who's done a great job of taking technology out of a silo and working cross-functionally with national staff and local council staff to envision what's possible. And so now we think within the next 12 to 24 months, There is some technology that is going to be made available to all of us at a very reasonable cost that will absolutely enable these types of membership options to become a reality, and to become a reality pretty quickly in a much faster, easier time frame than we ever envisioned before. So a lot of that project work is still ongoing. A lot of those capabilities are still being developed. Councils are still working with GSUSA to determine when they are able to opt into this and adopt into it. So I'm sure for everybody on the phone, you'll be happy to ask your councils about what's going on and what their plans are to adopt this. And I think it's a stay tuned, but I think it's all good news, and our capabilities are tremendously different from the last time the National Council got together to talk about these types of flexible membership options.
Great, Janet. Thanks so much. You know, there's a follow-up question I'll take a stab at, and Janet, you might want to jump in also. And it's the suggestion that where there are work groups or task groups, and what about a pilot program before implementation? And I think that's exactly what's happening right now in terms of the work that we're doing in co-creation with councils. What Janet's referring to in some of the technology work going on in volunteer systems actually did start with a proof of concept council, and then 6 additional councils we call top partners who took the original idea and then went and tested it, representing the 112, to really make sure that we are testing and getting broad input before any final decisions are made. So absolutely, you'll see that kind of co-creation and that piloting and testing things out before we jump into anything. But this is really important to both the national office but also councils. And so decisions that are being asked will really be thought through thoroughly, and recommendations made by both councils and GSUSA in partnership for the good of the whole movement. Okay, there are several questions coming in, and Linda, we are getting some echo from your line. So we're asking, can you check again to make sure that your computer lines, that they're off, the line on your computer is off. I'm going to try to see if you can't answer this, and if not, Janet and I will jump in. The question is about what does applicable mean, and the decision to use the word applicable in the proposal.
Okay, I'll give it a try. As I said, I think we looked at a variety of words that would reflect the flexibility word, and applicable was the one that we felt most conveyed the flexibility, and also continued to tie together the fact that any membership category would have dues attached to it. That's the primary reason that that word was chosen.
Okay, there's a question about, will October 1 still be the start of the membership year? And that answer is yes.
Yes.
Again, a number of questions still coming in about how would decisions be made, and again, I think we've addressed that. We will post this PowerPoint slide for everybody so that you'll be able to see that, but there really will be a process, and the National Board would vote on any change in membership categories.
And I think that we also discussed that, you know, it's a great opportunity to engage councils in the dialogue around any potential changes. As we did during this task group's process, we utilized existing GSUSA workshops, Act Now conferences, for instance, that had field on-the-ground practitioners, so that we got the good, the bad, the ugly in terms of implications of any potential idea, and certainly the co-creation of philosophy that's being implemented across GSUSA values and utilizes the expertise of our councils in a, I think, a very effective way, and responds to feedback much more quickly. So that is the mode of work going forward.
Okay, great point. And Janet, I'm going to ask you to jump in on this one. It was a comment that, remember, when we talk about co-creation, we're talking about GSUSA and council staff, but volunteers are critical in the process of membership and registering, and how important that input is as well. So could you talk from the council perspective of the importance of getting volunteer input into this process?
I could go on for the next 2 hours. I know we're limiting our Q&A to 10 minutes on that, but it's one of my favorite topics to talk about volunteers. And for those of you who aren't in Chicago, you will hear me talk to our staff and volunteers on a regular basis about it's not council staff and volunteers. We all together, the girls, the volunteers, the staff, the board members, the donors, we are the council together. And all of our councils working with the national staff and board are what comprise our movement. So as we talk about council, I know a lot of my volunteers talk about dropping off paperwork at council, and the council says we can do this or don't do that. And I'm trying very hard to break the habit here in Chicago, and hopefully everyone on this call will help me break that habit where you are as well. We are Girl Scouts together. And when we talk about the concept of co-creation between our national organization and our councils are our girls' voices, and they are our volunteers' voices blended with the dedication of our professional staff to work together. And I don't mean to be trite in saying this or cheesy, but it couldn't be more important to have the voices of the volunteer at the table in this co-creation. And I think our movement is really spending more time listening to the voices of our girls and volunteers than ever. And I think that's what's going to propel us forward with this and with so many other initiatives.
This is Linda. I would add too that people like Janet and other CEOs and COOs that were part of our task group were also real reality testers, not only from their own perspective and experience, but the fact that they would go home and they would talk to volunteers about processes and the joys and sorrows of various situations and registration process and those sorts of things. So that work got brought back and integrated into the task group work.
Okay, we have one more minute. We have quite a few questions still coming in. And just to let everybody know, we will be posting a lot of Q&A on the Delegate website following this. So any questions that we don't get to here, we'll make sure that we keep posting answers to. I think the one other question we see up here that we should address is about, give me an example of why we need to change the language, and what would be one new kind of category that would require this change. And I think the 16 months, a couple other questions coming in on that one as well, would probably be the best example. And so, Linda, do you want to try to take that one?
I think I'll start. And I think the best reason is that of the many things we discussed, the 16-month option, which is sort of an extended year, as opposed to some previous things like partial years and that sort of thing, are not annual or lifetime. And right now our Constitution restricts us to those kinds of memberships. You can be an annual member, you can be a lifetime member. You can get your membership certificate for 1 year, or you can get it for lifetime. And so if it seemed that it would be really helpful to councils to have a 16-month membership, so that someone coming in late in the spring of the membership year or for summer programming would be then signed up and can be able to continue their engagement smoothly into the new membership year. That requires a change in language. And do we want to be looking every 3 years at, well, let's add this category or let's add that category, or can we create enough flexibility in our governing documents to enable creation of the categories that we need moving forward to best serve our girls and best serve the situations that councils are encountering as they reach out to grow our membership and to serve girls and the communities that they live in.
Great, Linda. Thanks.
Thanks, Linda. It's Nadine. So our 10 minutes on this topic have come to an end. There are still some unanswered questions. If we have additional time at the end of this call, we can pick up on a few of those, or as Susan noted, the questions not yet responded to will be answered on the delegate website. So next, let's turn to proposal number 2, the reporting relationship of the Chief Financial Officer. This proposal seeks to amend the Constitution in keeping with the best practice for nonprofits and having the CEO appoint the CFO, as with any other senior executive. Again, you'll see on your screen the actual wording of the proposal. We've allotted 10 minutes for Q&A on the proposal. I believe everybody, all the delegates, have received the full rationale that was sent out in the early alert. So we're going to open up Q&A now. On the phone we have on our resource team. Our resource team is led by our national board members and Finance Committee Chair Karen Maloney, our national board member Chuck McLean, and we have the GSUSA staff member Marianne Dwyer, our senior governance advisor, who are here to answer your questions. So if you could please type in your questions on proposal number 2, we can answer them.
So the first question that comes in regarding this is, was there a particular reason it was originally decided that the National Board should choose the CFO instead of the CEO like other nonprofits? Chuck, Karen, or Marianne, would you like to answer that?
Marianne might be better.
Karen, would you like me to answer that, Karen?
Yes, that would be great.
Sure. This proposal is being brought forward because the Constitution and bylaws are regularly reviewed, and we researched the nonprofit industry practices in preparing this last year. So the National Board of Directors will still have oversight of the CFO position with this change.
Right, and this is Nadine Learn. Just looking back historically at why this was, why this was put into place originally, I think that we can speculate. We don't actually have documents that tell us exactly the details. It's a very unusual choice compared to what most nonprofits have. What we do know is that our last CFO was here for 38 years. We have, and actually what I will actually do is ask Karen or Chuck if you want to describe part of the rationale we think that this is not a, kind of not a current practice, and why we think this is better for the organization to not have this proposal. We really don't have, since there are not any other organizations that we know of where this is a current practice. It's difficult to kind of explain why Girl Scouts has. So I think maybe the best way to take it is more the positive. Why do we think this is better for the organization?
Sure, I'll start that, and I'm sure, Chuck, if you want to add in, feel free to jump in. But it truly is a best practice to have one executive who's responsible, which is in our instance the CEO or Anna, and to have that individual be the central point of communication, ensuring that we have facilitated a consistent and transparent communication and a singular messaging. And while it's been in practice, while we have had Angela on staff, and even before that, I mean, Florence worked very closely with Anna. It doesn't make sense for the board to have two executives who could have different methods of communication. And this is just getting us in line with the way other non-for-profits operate and what is benchmarked as a best practice.
Yeah, if I could just piggyback on that, Karen. I think whether it's a for-profit or a non-for-profit organization,
Exactly.
you would have to look at the governance structure that's in place in the organization to say that the governance structure provides for adequate oversight of the fiduciary responsibilities of the organization from the board. And if you looked at GSUSA, like in many organizations, you have the annual appointment of an audit committee, which we have. We have a board triennium elected audit committee, a finance committee, and even somebody from the board who acts as a treasurer for the organization. So the Girl Scouts has a sound governance structure, and by having the CFO as another member of the lead team, it's really a pragmatic reality, because in most organizations that you would see, the lead team works together in a collaborative approach, and you don't really need any discord where there's more than one member reporting to the board. So I just think it's bringing the governance standards up to best practices.
That's absolutely the case. The other thing I would add, this is Karen, is that if this proposal is adopted, the board would continue to be informed with regard to the responsibilities of the CFO. There are board members who interact regularly with the CFO, as Chuck was mentioning, the treasurer, and then the chairperson for the finance committee and the chairperson for the audit committee, as well as both those committees are very involved in interacting with the CFO. So there is a tremendous amount of crossover between the board and the executive staff. So I think that this gives us some added insights.
Thank you, Karen and Chuck. We have a number of questions coming in that are asking if by striking the language here in the proposal, we are eliminating the position of the CFO. So just want to clarify that is not the case. The CFO is still a core position in Girl Scouting. It is, the proposal really is just changing the reporting relationship of the CFO to the CEO. As part of the C-suite. And Chuck answered another one of the questions that came up that was about what, as we talk about the balances between a board interaction and the roles of the board and the roles of the executive team, the different roles that we have on the board. Another question that came up is, can we explain the difference between the CFO position and the board treasurer position? I was going to ask our governance expert here, Marianne Dwyer, to just respond to that one.
Thanks, Nadine. There is a distinct difference between the treasurer of the board and the CFO position from a governance perspective, in that the treasurer is working with the board of directors and the CFO is a paid position. So it's very distinctly different, and the treasurer then provides some degree of the oversight for the CFO. We have another question that has just come in, and the question is, what is the difference between the CFO and the CEO? Karen or Chuck, would you want to address that?
You mean other than pay? It's just a CFO joke. The difference is that the CEO is obviously responsible for running the organization, developing strategy from the lead team, and executing upon that strategy. The CFO has functional responsibilities in the finance area, and they would be over the areas of audit coordination, issuance of financial statements, day-to-day treasury responsibilities, really all of the financial functional areas, controllership, all of those would report up through the CFO, whereas the CEO has the responsibilities for the overall organization, which incorporates strategy and technology, program, sales and marketing, etc.
Sorry, Chuck, I couldn't get off mute fast enough.
That's okay.
Thank you, Chuck. We have another question that has come in. which is, don't most, if not all, councils already have a structure similar to what is proposed for the national board? And this is Mary Ann, and in fact, most of our councils have revised their bylaws to reflect the change that is currently being proposed for the national board over the last 2 to 3 years. The next question that we have coming in is, who did the CFO report to previously?
The CFO for GSUSA?
Correct.
Reported to the board of directors.
Right. The next question that we have is, does this deal with the national level and not the local council level? And the answer to that would be, this is reflective of the proposal being for the national board, not for the local council. Another question, Karen and Chuck, is if the CEO appoints the CFO, will there still be checks and balances? I know, Chuck, you mentioned a couple of them, but perhaps you could reiterate them very quickly.
Yes, there's, as I said, there's the annual appointment of an external audit firm who reviews financial statements, internal controls, and the rest, and that obviously will remain in place. There's the triennial appointment of the board of directors of an audit committee, which functions as you might think an audit committee would, by also reviewing with both external and internal auditors the financial statements of the organization on an ongoing basis. Then there's a finance committee, which Karen has been chairing for the board of directors, and as we previously mentioned, there's also a treasurer who acts in a role. So all of the major pillars of governance around financial oversight are in place at Girl Scouts USA and will remain in place.
Great, thanks. So that is actually the end of our 10 minutes. Again, if there are any questions, if there's any time remaining at the end of our hour, we can revisit some of these questions, or we will post the answers to the delegate website. So let's move on to Proposal 3, the role of past presidents. Speaking for the National Board, we have National President Connie Lindsay and past President Cynthia Thompson. Also available to respond to questions are GSUSA staff members Gail Benson and Mary Ann Dwyer. This proposal is a change in the Constitution to have the past presidents of the National Board no longer be ex officio members of the current National Board. So again, if you have any questions, you go ahead and type those in, and we will have our resource teams answer them as they come up. So the first question, will past presidents now receive compensation for their new proposed role? There's actually no new proposed role in this proposal. This is actually changing their role to remove them from being ex officio members of the current board. The next question. What changed or influenced the decision to remove past presidents from this role? Connie or Cynthia, you want to take that one?
Hi, this is Cynthia. Can you hear me?
Hi, Cynthia. It's hard to hear you.
Okay.
Connie was talking too. Could you not hear me?
No, I couldn't hear you, Connie. Now you're back.
Okay, Connie, go ahead.
I was just saying that when we look at best practices and compare ourselves with other large nonprofits, none of them really have past presidents serving on the current board. There are myriad roles that we have our past presidents engaged in, and Cynthia can certainly speak to this, in helping us with the work of the movement, but serving on the current board is one of the things that we saw in terms of best practice, that we could use our past presidents in other ways, that they would still be able to attend the council sessions and so on, but on the current board, a best practice would dictate that we no longer have that as a practice in Girl Scouts. Cynthia?
Yes, no, I was just going to add that I think it's consistent with what we've been saying throughout this webinar, that, we continuously look at what we're doing and are we following the best practices. And this is just another instance of a process or a relationship that really, I don't know that it adds a lot of value based on the way it's worked in the past, and we really don't need it.
Thank you, Connie. We have another question that has come in. Does this include the immediate past president, or will the immediate past president continue to have an ex officio board position?
I, Connie Lindsay, will not have an ex officio board position. I support this proposal. I will continue to serve the movement in any way that makes sense, or when I'm called upon, my passion is no less dissipated, but I will not have a role on the board.
And that would be, that applies to all the 9 living past presidents.
That's right. To all of the 9 living past presidents. That would apply to each.
Thank you, Connie. We actually have a question regarding how many past presidents this would include.
That would be 9.
9, sorry. The next question is, does this, does past president refer only to national board or local council?
National board.
National board. And the local councils, the research was done, and the bylaws indicate that none of the councils have provisions for all past presidents to continue on their local boards, but this is for the national board specifically.
Thank you, Connie. The next question we have is, will past presidents be voting members of the National Council?
Yes.
The next question is, some organizations have at least the immediate past president as an ex officio role for a year. Was this considered?
We did research on major organizations, and that is definitely not the best practice, nor is it the prevailing practice. Some do, but that is not something that we opted to do for us.
Question. How will the removal of the roles of the past president affect the turnover from president to president?
It wouldn't have any effect. The past president would still be working with that incoming president as needed. No effect.
Right.
I'm sorry.
Okay. The next question is, other than it being a best practice, is there any other reason for eliminating their ex officio status?
No, none other than you want the current board chair, the current president, to be able to work with the incoming board and current board on issues that are relevant to them at this time. And we can engage past presidents in initiatives for the movement as needed. We want to keep them engaged, but being a part of the day-to-day governance is probably not, it's certainly not best practice, and I don't think we're utilizing them as effectively as we could be.
Thank you, Connie. Our next question actually is, if this is adopted, what will past presidents do?
past presidents will do, for example, Cynthia Thompson, who's on the phone. When a vacancy occurred on the National Board Development Committee in late 2013, our past president, Cynthia Thompson, was appointed to fill the vacancy. Connie Matsui is the GSU, a past president, is the GSUSA nominee for the WAG's World Board. So there are myriad opportunities for our past presidents to work with us on the work that is so important to the movement, to serve as ambassadors and engaging all of our members around the globe in the work of the Girl Scouts. So there is ample work to be done by past presidents in a way that supports the current president and the board and the movement overall.
Thank you, Connie. The next question we have is, what is the criteria for determining best practices, or who was consulted in determining those best practices? I'd be happy to answer that. We actually spoke with consultants from BoardSource, which is the preeminent national organization for working with nonprofit organizations and their boards, and Grant Thornton. And in addition to that, the Midwest Center for Nonprofits. Midwest Center for Nonprofits. And all of those resources indicated that the role of a past president is not a recommended best practice. Connie, or would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think that's fine.
Well, I would just like to add that, you know, a lot of us serve on other boards, so we also have experience associated with board service on other organizations. And so I think it's great that we have the feedback from the groups you mentioned, but I think people should also consider the fact that a number of us serve on other boards and are familiar with practices that help us help GSUSA stay current.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One more question. Who or what determines the next president is the question.
We've talked about governance, so there are governance processes that we follow that all nonprofits that are operating in a pattern of excellence follow. So we have a board development committee that does the work of making sure we're looking at the board members for each triennium, and that includes the office of the president.
Great. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Cynthia. That comes to the end of our time for this proposal. If there are any other, we have a few more minutes. If there are any other questions that folks want to put forward on the first two proposals of this last proposal, we can probably have time for another 2 or 3 questions. 2 questions.
Hi, this is Susan again. We do have a number of questions asking about how pricing will be set for any new membership categories that are recommended. Janet, are you still on the line out there? Could you jump in and talk a little bit about how we propose pricing to be set?
Sure, Susan. Sorry about that. Had to get unmuted. Yeah, pricing to go along with these myriad options of membership categories. So as we described, there's a co-creation process that we are engaging in to explore and research and potentially pilot some different options. Clearly, we could not predetermine what the appropriate price would be to go with those options. So ultimately, what the process would entail is during the co-creation development of these membership categories and ideas would also be the development of an appropriate pricing structure to go with those. Those would be vetted through councils, through the national staff, and researched and potentially piloted on a local basis. And then all of the recommendations, including the category, the description and definition of what that category or membership product would be, as well as the appropriate related pricing, would go in front of ultimately the National Board upon recommendation from the co-creation team for adoption and approval, and then come back to councils for implementation with the national organization.
There's a question about the discussion topic and the importance of the outdoors in the GSLE. That is not a topic of conversation for this webinar, but actually is a topic of conversation for the topic of conversation for the next webinar in July. That's July 16th. Last question: can we sum up the proposals? There were basically there's really only the three proposals that were advanced by the National Board for consideration at the National Council session this year. Again, that first proposal is flexibility in membership dues. The second proposal is around the reporting relationship of the CFO to the CEO, consistent with best practices in other nonprofit organizations. And the last proposal is about changing the, removing the role of past presidents, of all past presidents, as ex officio members of the current National Board. So again, any further questions? There are a number of other questions that came in. We will be posting answers on the Delegate website. If you have questions, if you're not on the Delegate website, please speak with your local, your council convention representative. And I'm going to turn this actually back over to Connie Lindsay so we can close the call.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for participating on the call today, and we look forward to seeing you at the convention. Thank you for your participation, and have a great afternoon.